not just cute, he's also talented. A drummer, a percussionist, a composer, a teacher. You name it, he seems to have done it all. After having played in bands like Advaita, Incognito and Faridkot, he performed the Tarun Balani Collective as well. We talked to the young musician to find out if he seems to have hit the right chord.
Hi, I'm Tarun Balani. I'm a drummer and a composer. I'm also the creative director at Global Music Institute here in New Delhi. I have a bachelor's degree in music from Berklee College of Music in Boston. I also play the tabla and I study with Ustad Zakir Hussain, but surprisingly I study that in San Francisco every year. It's quite hard to, do these different roles of being a drummer and as a sideman playing in different bands like Advaita, Faridkot and other groups that I'm part of, and also leading your own group. I have my own band called the Tarun Balani Collective, and we just recorded our debut album this summer. Apart from that, I'm also the director at Global Music Institute. So these three roles are very, very different, but also similar at the same time because they're related to music. But it's actually very exciting and challenging to be a part of these three roles. Like I said earlier, both the roles are different. When I'm playing as a sideman, say in a band like Advaita or Faridkot, my job is different. I'm there to make the music sound as good as I can as a part of the team, as a part of the band. Whereas when I'm leading my own group, it's more of my vision. All the compositions are mine, and the artistic vision is mine. So the band is kind of helping me and supporting me to put my music out there. Whereas in the other situation, I am collectively holding the fort together for the rest of the band and making the music sound good. With my band, the music that we do is mostly jazz, because the idiom and the structure that we're following is coming out of the jazz tradition. We have chord changes, we have melody, and we have a lot of improvisation on those chord changes, melody and form. But in its essence, it also has a lot of the Indian element, because I was born in India, brought up in India, lived in New Delhi all my life, and it's only for 4-5 years that I was in Boston and I studied this tradition. So I think in its essence it is jazz, but it has a lot of the Indian element also in it. I think 10-15 years ago, when I started out playing in the professional scene, rock music was really, really new, and the interest was being generated and people were starting to play rock music and in rock bands. But the way the music industry and the scene is progressing, I think people are looking out to doing other styles of music, and not particularly say jazz, because jazz gets very, very specific, and it's a tradition that's coming down for it has a lineage and a process. But other forms also, like world music and maybe say R&B and indie music, maybe alternative rock or singer-songwriter kind of stuff. Jazz is definitely picking up, because some artists like me and the other guys that we play with, we are appreciated. There are certain clubs like the Blue Frog in Bombay and B-Flat Bar in Bangalore, even Shisha Jazz Cafe in Pune. So these kind of clubs do support jazz artists, and slowly and steadily I think jazz is going to pick up. There is definitely a market. We have a festival in India called the Jazz Yatra, which only happens once a year. So I'm hoping with the changing scene, these things are going to change. We'll have more jazz festivals, we'll have more jazz artists coming down, especially with institutes like this, where we have a lot of jazz musicians flying down to teach. If that's happening, then there are going to be a lot of jazz gigs, and the audience is going to get exposed to the jazz music, and definitely the market and interest is going to be generated. I was 18 years old and I went to New York City to study at Music Institute there. And while I was studying there, so the classes would happen during the day, and then in the evening all the students would go out to jazz clubs and listen to music. So that's when I saw a lot of drummers like Roy Haynes, Jeff Tain Watts and Brian Blade leading their own bands, and I was very surprised at how drummers, instead of just being a drummer in the band or being a sideman, they were leading their own bands and composing for the group. So which was very inspiring for me, and I thought, someday when I'm ready and I have my own music, that I would like to lead my own group. So this happened in Boston last year when I put a group together with a bunch of my friends and musicians that I was playing with, and I wrote a lot of compositions and just got the band to play them, and the sound came out. My music had an identity coming from my inspiration and the artists that I listened to, and that's how I came about the collective. So currently with the collective, I have Tarun Balani on guitars, I have Sharik Hassan playing piano, Sohail Yusuf Khan on sarangi and Hindustani vocals, and Bruno Rehberg on upright bass. What happens with a jazz setting is that the band can vary because the music is written down and everybody reads the music, and to make it more interesting and exciting, we always have a different group. So while I was in Boston, I had a different setup, and while I'm in India right now, I had a different setup. So for my debut album, which we just recorded 2 weeks ago, we had this band which I just named. In a typical, a modern jazz setting, or specifically for my group, we do not have a vocalist, and the reason is that because the melodies and the entire melodic content is held either by the trumpet or the guitar. So I didn't feel that there was a need of the vocalist. Plus, the music I'm writing for the collective doesn't have any, vocal specific music. So it's, in its essence, it's just an instrumental. I've been teaching since I was 17 years old, and it kind of happened by accident. So there's an institute called the Performance Collective in Delhi. So the owner of that, Mr. Ridesh Kokar, so he gave me a frantic call one day when I was this is just the next day after I finished my 12th standard. And he's like, Tarun, you have to come teach tomorrow 9 AM, and that's it. And he just put the phone down. So I had no option, so I drove down to Gurgaon, and I went there and I started teaching. So it kind of happened by accident, but the joy and satisfaction that you get from teaching is nothing that I've experienced in my life. So that kind of continued. So every time I went abroad and I came back, there were a lot of students that wanted to learn, a lot of friends of mine that wanted to share ideas and not specifically lessons. But at Global Music Institute, where I'm the creative director, I'm teaching a lot, and we just had our first summer workshop. So teaching at this level is definitely very different and interesting because students are coming in who are actually playing in the circuit, so they have a little bit of experience. But taking them forward and us sharing our ideas with them is definitely very, very enriching and very satisfying. So I really enjoy teaching. Inspiration for me comes from many different things. Definitely music inspires music. So there are a lot of artists that I got inspired by, like Wayne Shorter, Miles Davis, and a lot of drummers like Roy Haynes, Tony Williams, and so these are specifically coming from the jazz background. I also listen to a lot of rock music, and especially new rock bands like Incubus, Coldplay, also Pink Floyd, so a bunch of different things, and also Indian classical music. Some of my favorite musicians are Ustad Zakir Hussain and Ustad Amjad Ali Khan. So the musical inspiration is very wide. The sound palette that I derive from is huge. Apart from that, I think photography really inspires me. My grandfather was a photographer, so we have his camera which is lying around the house. We also have his paintings and photography. So I really got inspired by the imagery and the photographs that he had taken, and so I think art also really inspires me a lot. It's specifically the art that we have in our house, which is from my grandfather. I think yes, music is not considered as a career, and I also feel, and that's totally my personal opinion, that till the time a kid is singing on Saregama on GTV, that's fine. But any other, musical career as a composer or anything else, or just being a drummer or just being a guitar player, is still not considered as a profession for a lot of parents, because it does not give you a lot of financial backing. Yes, being a musician, having the financial instability is the biggest concern, and what the Indian society is used to is that kids go out, and earlier, probably 15 years ago, was just go, get an engineering degree and go get a job, and now probably it's the MBA bug, which is bit everybody. So I think once the music industry gets channelized and there's more awareness about music and the career options that it offers, I think people will get more aware of it and accept it as a professional. I feel very blessed and lucky that my parents accepted at an early age that I wanted to be a musician. But it was a little difficult because they were also concerned about the career options that you have, and they were very persistent and particular that we should finish our degrees from Delhi University, which we did, and which actually helped me when I went abroad, because I transferred a lot of my credits from Delhi University into the university there. So it was not very hard, because like I said, my grandfather was an artist, so that bug was already in the house, and my dad also paints and sings a little bit. So I think eventually it was a little difficult in the beginning, because they didn't understand what exactly we were going to do. So they were like, you're just going to play drums all day and all that. But later, they started understanding that, okay, this is how you do it. You have concerts to play, you compose music, and you become a part of the music industry. And so it was fine in the end. What I love about being a musician is the extreme spontaneity of being a musician. You are creating music at all times, whether it's composing in my own room or whether I'm playing in a band setting. I think that's very exciting to me, and every time I play music, I feel I'm a new person. That experience almost transcends me into this different space, which is actually what I don't like about being a musician is sometimes when you're playing in a club or something like that and people are talking, man, that's the worst thing. Like, I just hate it. I just feel like picking my stick up and throwing it at them. But apart from that, I love everything about being a musician, and I love my job.